The death toll in earthquake-hit Turkey and Syria now stands at over 33,000, but that figure is expected to rise again. But as communities mourn, recovery efforts continue, and a total of 131 people in Turkey have now been placed under investigation, accused of erecting poorly constructed buildings which toppled in this disaster. Well, for more, we can speak now to Sinan Ciddi. He's a senior fellow at the Foundation of Defense of Democracies, and he joins us from Washington, D.C. Thank you for being with us here on France 24. 6 days after this quake, and with elections coming up in Turkey, the government has launched this crackdown on building contractors. In your view, is the Turkish government trying to find someone else to blame?
Yes, it looks certainly like to be the case. People who watch Turkey like myself, we've been warning about this since essentially the disaster struck, and over 130 have obviously now been identified as the culprits. But we should remember that yes, it is quite fine to essentially identify those who were responsible for the building, but what about all the local officials, the government officials, and national officials who essentially had lax code and building regulations? Why were these not enforced? So this government has been in power for just over 20 years. The contractor end of this is the smallest piece of the pie, because remember, it is officials in a state and local capacity which are essentially responsible for granting not only permission to have those buildings built, but also essentially inspecting them and saying, yes, these buildings are fit to live in or occupy, which obviously hasn't been done. But you're right, the government's now basically in a focused attempt to essentially contain the political fallout on itself and President Erdogan, and basically find another scapegoat to essentially blame.
If we now look ahead, the Turkish leader has made it clear that he wants to get these destroyed towns and cities quickly rebuilt in a 3-month window. Is there, though, a plan in place to make sure that these new buildings are better constructed and that they abide by building regulations?
So an incumbent, which is a fundamental part of the problem, that is the Erdogan government, cannot necessarily make promises that people are going to believe, because they've had ample opportunity to make sure that that didn't happen in the first place for 20 years. A 3-month timeline to resurrect sort of livable buildings other than sort of porta cabins or other temporary accommodation is just not realistic. But also you have to remember, Turkey did have an emergency fund called the earthquake tax, which basically all homeowners have been paying into since the last deadly earthquake in Turkey in 1999, which appears to have been looted by the government, because people are asking, well, where is all the money that we paid into, the fund that we paid into? And Erdogan responded back in 2020 when he was asked this question of what happened to the fund's money. He said, basically, we've spent it where we need to, and I don't feel the need to basically explain myself. So people are understandably angry at this point.
When it comes to the situation on the ground, does Turkey have the proper finances, the proper expertise, the proper architects to ensure that its fault line buildings are built correctly?
Short answer, yes. I mean, Turkey has plenty of architects and designers and engineers which can actually come up with and oversee the building of, reliable and earthquake-resistant homes, just like any other country. Turkey is very well resourced. The problem, though, is governance and oversight. Does it have the capacity to actually sort of deploy measures whereby shoddy building that just falls apart during an earthquake is not built? It doesn't happen. Possibly not under this government. That would be my argument. They're too tarnished. But Turkey is also going to need a considerable amount of foreign aid, which is already coming, and disaster relief, which the World Bank, the United States, and other allies are stepping up to provide. But let's be clear, if an earthquake of this magnitude and the disaster that we've seen had struck any country, I think, regardless of how developed they were, they would need international assistance.
Okay, Sinan Ciddi, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.